Alright, hello class. This lab we're going to learn how to solder an XLR. We're not going to be making the most amazing XLR. We're going to be making a XLR that works. I choose to go with cheaper parts first because it's easy to replace if you screw up. And I want you to have a wire you can take home and use without breaking the bank. Some of you guys will never use these. Some of you guys might find yourself using it a whole bunch. So these are the connectors. Again, the focus here is just to solder and do a good solder job and make a working cable. So there is a female connector that is this one right here, and then there's the male connector that is this one right here. Both of them come apart, and these particular connectors, because they are cheaper, have different insides. Not all nicer connectors won't do this necessarily. So this is important. This will hold the wire to the connector, so you need this plastic little bit. We'll get back to that in a bit. This part obviously screws on, and then we've got the connector here. It pops right out, and there is an alignment with this piece, and there's an indent on the inside. So we'll get to all this stuff, but I just want to point out that these look like little scoops. They look a little different than your standard piece. And then on the female side, if we take this off, so I've mounted the camera sort of in a strange way, and you literally unscrew and just push and it'll come out. If you have large fingers, you could use a pencil or something, but this side's actually easier to solder because it's got these sort of carriages that it can hold to. They look like that. And this piece does come out all the way here. Let me get it. There we go. But you can see that it's got these carriages that we can some people poke it through the center. Some people put some solder here. We'll talk about ways you could do this that'll be a little bit easier. So those are the connectors. And we'll just put this back in. Now this jumpy part has to line up with this pin. But it has to be done while facing down so that this pin that you normally have to push, this is what pushes it out. So if you try to put it in like this, you run into issues. But if you do it upside down and line them up, and you can always look down the center for this, it'll go back in, no problem. So you see, no effort. If you're pushing like crazy and stuff, you're probably doing it wrong. So that's the female side. You're going to need some solder. This is 60-40-10, and it's going to melt nice for us. So we'll see this in a second. These are some wire strippers. They are meant to peel off parts of a wire. I have some really fancy ones that I'll have available in class, but this is my personal tool, and you're not allowed to use it without me watching you use it. Don't walk off with this. I use this a lot. I'm going to be using a lot less solder. You don't need very much. I'm just going to give you a little bit of solder to work with. This is like a giant reel, and that would last a long time. And then we have this guy's our little helper. It'll hold things in place. You'll learn to sort of hate this at times because it can be a bit annoying to fiddle with, but learning to use it effectively will make your life easier. And then we have the cable itself. You'll get a section of cable. It'll be chopped at two ends. And we have the solder gun. Now the ones in class will be a bit different. This is my own solder gun. You'll have a sponge or a wet towel to use. I have here some tip cleaner. We pull this off here. That I'm going to be using to clean the brush. It's important that you clean the brush between strokes. You don't want solder just sitting on the end of this. It's going to get very hot, and we will talk about this. I have mine set to Celsius, and the ones in the lab will be very similar. They're Wellers, and they're actually probably a little nicer than the one I have. Also, when you solder, you must have something underneath your thing to solder on that it could fall onto. I don't want any solder falling on the tables. That's not good for the tables, and it can leave a mark. So you can just grab like a piece of paper or anything. So I'm going to grab here just a notebook to solder on top of. You absolutely must do this. If you don't, you'll get in trouble. So, okay, let's get started. So we've got our two connectors. Let's get ourselves some wire. I'm going to hand out the wire, so don't worry about this. But You'll just get a little strip of wire, just enough to make like a tiny wire. Maybe a little more than that, and we'll cut it. There we go. And in here are 2 conductors and a shield. So let's go ahead and strip this. And I should say this isn't like the most nice wire. This is just wire that'll work. If you want to make a nice mic cable, there is much nicer wire you can buy that has some advantages. But we're just going to be using this stuff. Make it a little more rugged and things, but we'll still make a working XLR. So we want to get this gray layer off, and that's what the wire strippers are for. It's going to strip them off. I'm going to try a 14. There's little numbers on here first, and just lightly grip, not too hard, and then just pull it off. And looks like we got it. So you see here's the piece that we took off here, and I have about this much length. We'll give it a chance to focus on this a little bit. Come on. Anyways, you get the idea. So this particular wire has a bit of white fuzzy stuff right here. We do not need this white fuzzy stuff. It'll just be in your way. So I do recommend taking that and just cutting that off. And my wire strippers here are old. There we go. So that's off. That'll just make your life a little bit easier. This outer part is part of the shield, this shiny metal sheath. And if we were to pull it out, the stranded silver right here, that's the shield. This is ground. We're going to twist that up. And the silver part connects that. We do not care about this. So we're going to take this and take that off. Make sure you don't accidentally strip your ground. So what did I just do with the ground wire? Oh, it's over here. Okay, perfect. So this bit right here, just solder sort of runs off of it. It's really more of a pain. It's better to just take that jazz and chop it off. See if we can't do that with this crappy clippers. There we go. You know, just take it off. So now we're left with our black wire and our red wire. Our red wire will be hot, our black wire will be cold. And so we'll go ahead and strip these. Now these are smaller. You can use the wire strippers here again and sort of just chop them off like so. But these are a little bit more of a pain to use. But you can see it works just fine. In fact, you could even use your nails. And you'll notice that they're stranded, so I like to twist the wires at the end so that they're a little easier to work with. And this is a good amount of wire to expose. I see people expose a lot more than this, and you don't want to do that because later on, if this is touching anything except the exact thing it's supposed to be touching, you will get a short and your wire won't work good. It won't work at all, and you'll need to resolder it. Now, I'm going to use my fancy strippers. These ones are made for smaller gauge wire, like these, or larger gauge wire. It's smaller, but the numbers are bigger. It's the way the standard works. So I'm going to set it in at the 22 mark and place the wire in here, and it just comes right off. And so this is the other. So I used 22 on there. I believe on this one though I went with 24. And it's just how hard you grip it. If you grip it too hard, you might cut through the copper and you'll have to re-strip everything all over again. It can be a little bit annoying. But there we go. That's one side of the wire. Before we do the other, there's some like nice things we can do that'll make our life a little bit easier. The first one is we can slip on. We don't need to worry about the strain relief yet. We could slip on the connector though for this side, and we could slip on the connector for the other side. This way, when we have the wire all over the place, these connectors are already on the wire. This is commonly forgotten. If you forget to put these on and then you solder the connector on, there's no way, and you let's say you do the other side too, well then there's no way to put these on. Now you have to unsolder it, desolder it, and slide it on and do the whole thing all over again. So please make sure you have these on. It's a pretty common mistake, and it's really a bummer because then they realize they have to go and redo everything they just did. Alright, so now let's strip this side and do the same thing. So I'm just going to come down here, and I sort of just do it by feeling. I think 14 probably be pretty good. And this got yanked down into the wire a bit. See how it's empty there? So I'm going to go a little bit further down, and I can always strip off extra if I need to. There we go. And we have, so I cut off a little more than I needed, but we can always just strip off the extra that we don't need. I'm going to chop off the fuzzies. If we can get this off, there we go. It looks like I got most of the silver shield with it, which is pretty nice. So we will take those, put our ground, our black and our red. This actually isn't too much. I'm going to chop just a hair off each one. It's not bad to have this amount of room, but we can make them a bit shorter. Oh, I may have taken a little too much off black. We'll make it work. So there we go. And now, instead of dealing with those strippers, I'm going to use these because these are just faster and better. See how easy that is. And then again, I'm just going to, there's a little clamp here that comes down and grabs the wire when you pull back. So you got to make sure the wire's through there. So you put the wire in, and I'm going to put it in at gauge 22. It's the second one over. And then make sure that when this black piece comes down, it can grab the wire. And it just pulls it off. And you don't need hardly nothing, right? You don't want like an itty bit, but you don't need very much. It only needs to make contact with the one part, and that's it. Now, we've already got these on, and you can see these are much easier to slide on before you do this, because now the ends are all over the place. So now they're connected. This is fine. By the way, I'm going to flip on my solder station here, because it's not been on. And I may have accidentally messed up the temperature when I was dusting it off. So we'll see if this is hot enough. If it's not hot enough, I'll just, turn it up a little bit. Right now it's at 297 Celsius. So we'll see. That'll probably be fine. I don't know. I typically don't pay attention to the temperature too much. If it's not hot enough, I just turn it up. So now we're going to do something to make our lives a bit easier when we're soldering. So we're going to do what's called tinning the ends. So when we want to attach this to, let's do the female, we'll do the male side first. When we want to attach these wires to this, we only have so many hands, and we want to use this thing to take control of some of that. But it'll be even easier if all we have to do is put the wire down and simply just heat the wire up. So what I'm going to do is put some solder on each one of these. That way when I put it down, it's already ready to go. So to do this, I'm going to put this over my notepad because I don't want to drop any solder on the desk. I'm going to have this grab the wire, and we're going to put a little bit of solder on each piece. Now these heat up pretty quick. It might already be ready to go. I'm going to take my solder. Now you'll have a different length of solder, probably like this much. You don't need a whole lot. And I am simply going to put the wire, I'll try zooming in for this. And let's put this like horizontal. I'm simply going to touch the two, and the solder will simply glob onto the copper strand. I'm going to give it a fair bit because I need enough to, when I also put it on the connector, it'll just stay. So I'm going to simply push it on. The fumes are bad to breathe. Oops, see, we got a little bit of a drop there. That's why we use the notebook. There we go. That's just about enough. And make sure you clean your tip some. And then let's just take a look here. So there's a little bit, let me see if I can get a good angle. There's a little bit of a glob on there. And we're going to use this to stick it to the connector. I know it's a little blurry, but you know, that's what it is. It doesn't want to focus for some reason. So we're going to do this to the other two wires. So we'll do this to the black wire. Again, just simply putting it on, letting it go. Just connecting it, letting it go. So 297 Celsius has been working out just fine for me. And then I'm going to rotate this so I can get the silver wire, which is the ground. And we'll connect this up like so. Probably do it above the wire so it flows down. And there's some stuck on the solder gun. There it goes. Doesn't want to come off. Solder cools down pretty quick. And when you're holding the solder, it'll melt before it gets hot. So it won't burn you. But if you're holding a copper wire, that'll totally burn you if you hold on to it for too long. So just be a little careful. So there we go. There's our pre-tinned wires. Oh, that's a good shot. And you can sort of see how they look. And let's go ahead, let's tin the other side since it's easier if we just do it all at once, right? So we'll come over here to this side. And the shield on this side is not twisted up very much. So I'm going to twist it up to keep it from coming apart. In fact, I didn't twist any of these. And it is a good idea to do at least a couple twists so that the wire is a little more uniform. Like so. Alright, so we're going to tin the wires now. And this one doesn't have as much room. That's just fine. It's got enough room for us to do what we need to do. Put some on there. Again, I have the solder gun on top. And you could even angle it down so the solder flows off the tip like that. We got a nice glob on that one. Then we will do the same for this one. See if we can get it without it falling off. That's pretty good. There we go. And the same for the red. Now the red's facing up and down, which can be a little bit more of a pain. But we will get it. Again, do not breathe in the solder fumes. Ideally, you have a fan or you're in a well-ventilated space when you're doing this. But here we go. Here are our joints on this side, the new one. That's what they look like. And here are the other ones. So we've got our two sides. And we could see a piece fell, but it didn't matter. You can see it's kind of stuck to the notebook, but it'll just come off. We don't want that stuff on the desk. So keep your solder around. And let's grab our connector. So I'll put up on screen the wiring diagram, but on the male, and these are going to match. So we're going to make 2 red, 3 black, and 1 green. So if we look here, there's a 1 on this one right here. There's a black 1. It can be a little tough to see, but yeah, it's there. The top one is 3. And this is going to be our black wire. And 2 is our positive. So this is going to be red. And then the 1 is going to be our shield. That's going to be the silver wire. So the top one will be black. So that one's pretty easy to remember. Just do that by convention. And we're going to make this one red. And this one is our number 1. So we're going to make that our shield. The most common one to screw up is the shield and the red because they are on either side. The one that's in the middle has to be black. So we can't really screw that up. It actually doesn't matter if you flip red and black as long as they match on both connectors. But we're going to stick with the convention that the top is black and that 2 is red. 1 will be shield. So just look at it. Make a mental note. So again, there is the number 1. We can get this to focus. Come on. Anyway, so this one says 1 on it. So we're going to put this, I'm gonna anchor this. Now you can twist these little pieces here to loosen parts and then twist them again to lock them in place. And I'm going to anchor it so it holds it. Remember, you want the tool to do work for you. I've seen people really make it harder than easier. So it's gonna hold the middle one. We don't want to hold any of these solder gun on this for too long because it can melt the plastic housing when these get hot. So we want to be brief with our connections and just double check where the 1 is. So the 1 in this case is closest to me, facing this way. So this will be the pin number 1. And you will do yourself a lot of favors if you make it so that your wires line up before you begin to solder. So if this is 1, that means red has to be on the other side, and that means black has to be at the top. So I'm just going to sort of line these up and bend them however I need to bend them to make them line up, so that when I solder, I have to do minimal amount of adjustment. Trust me, once one's connected, it gets harder. You could screw things up easier. So here we go. We've got one here, one there, and one there. Some people pre-tin the connectors well. With these particular connectors, I think it actually doesn't work so hot, especially since if you solder it right, I can lock these into their places without them moving. Like you see how the black one's set in stone, and then I can grab this piece and have it grab it. So this part can take a little bit of finesse. Once you got it, you got it. And okay, black's in place and our ground's in place. So all we have to do, ideally with no extra solder, is simply heat it up and it'll connect right on. And I'm just going to hold the iron on top of this. Now this is playing a little hard to get. I might need a little more solder here to make this work. So I'm going to add a touch of solder to this, like so. Okay. And again, I don't want any of these pieces unnecessarily touching any other pieces. And we just sort of massage it into place. Looking pretty good. We're going to do the top one now. The reason you might pre-tin the connectors is so that they have something to grab onto. It can be a little tricky though. And I'm going to add just a hair more to this. This is a little heavy on the solder, but it'll get the job done. And then the last one, it's not quite connected. So what I'm going to do is see if I can't grab it. Do a little tap, make sure it's not super hot from the other ones. And this is pretty close. I'm just going to connect it with some extra solder. You can always come to me and ask for more solder if you need it. So I'm going to get some extra solder on here and just sort of push it in there, like so. I don't know how this is going to look. I'll try and zoom in post. Maybe put a little extra right there. This is a lot of solder, by the way. This job could be cleaner, but it'll be good enough to work. Alright, let's see the damage. Alright, so we'll take this off. We'll take this off. Here is our connector. If it'll focus. Now the tips, these can still be warm for a little bit. Almost there, come on. Come on. Anyways, there's our connectors. That's what they look like. Is it pretty? No. Will it work? Probably. No silver part. See how the black wire, the only part the black wire touches is the top, and then the silver only touches, and again, make sure it's 1, and the red's going to 2. This is going to be true on the other connector as well. So we shouldn't have any shorts. This should be good to go. And you need to, once these have cooled off, it'll, you know, they're already cool. Just make sure when you wiggle, they don't just easily come off. Some people put a lot of solder on. A lot of solder doesn't mean it's been connected well. Just give them a little push. Nothing crazy, because they will come off. So don't go too crazy. So this is the male connector. So we need the male part. I always get people, when they're putting this back together, they think that something's broken. Oh, now this focus is great. I don't know what the deal is before, but there you go. There's our connections that we have. So there is an alignment. You see where this hole is, and if we look down this, there is a ring down the center. That's going to stop this from coming all the way, because remember, this never came through all the way to begin with. We want this clip here, this clip side, to line up that silver bit with the clip here. So when you're looking at this, just line up that clip with this outer hole here. So we're going to take the outer hole, line it up with the clip, and it just slides right in. Now to hold it in place, because when you push it in, this is just going to get pushed back. This is where we need the strain relief. So the strain relief actually has a hole right here. It's not connected down the middle. And we can simply just push it down and push it on through that hole. Do not pull this apart. It will snap, and then you're just going to have to buy a new part. So don't do that. And this will hold the piece on when we screw it on. So now we take this, and oh, there's an alignment on this thing as well. There we go. I just sort of push until it's on, twisting until I find the spot. And then we can just twist this on, and we've got the male side done. Now we can do the female side. This one's a little bit easier. So for this one, again, we're going to push to get to the back part. And you could use a pencil or something. I have pretty small pinkies, so I can just use my pinky. There we go. Again, there will be the number 1, 2, 3. Again, 1 will be shield, 3 will be black, 2 will be hot. There will be a wiring diagram I'll write up in class as well. But there's 1. This must be the silver wire. So that means that the across from it must be red, and the top one must be black. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and they're physically numbered. So let's put these on. This time, 1 is facing away from me. Oh, a note. If you deform this, it will not be able to correctly push back out. I see people bend this up in ways, and then it doesn't work anymore, and they can't push the wire in, and you'll have to buy another piece or try to fix it by pushing it back or something. It can be a bit of a nightmare. So you may instead try to grab across the top here. This requires it to open pretty wide, but we'll do that in this case so that you are discouraged from using the bottom piece. Now for this, I'm just going to double check. So the 1 is this one right here, so this must be 2. I don't want to mess with accidentally screwing that up, so I always double check. I'm going to align my wires as they look there. So 1 here, 2 is here, and 3 is here. This one I think you'll find is much easier to solder. So we'll put 2 in, then we'll get, or what is that, 3, whatever. We got the black wire in, there's the red, there's the silver. This is the one that I think I didn't give, or I gave too much cut to one of them. I can't remember. But let's see if we can bend them so that they sit pretty nicely. And then once we have that, we'll try to move it over without screwing it up. Grab it. That looks pretty good. Now this one we're probably going to need to add solder for. How's that look on there? You can kind of see that. We'll add some solder at the top, let it flow down, and connect this ground to this silver piece. Again, you don't want to hold these too long. And I see people sometimes put a lot of solder down, but it doesn't actually connect it to the piece. Make sure it is actually connected. So there's one. Put it down on the top, let it flow down the gun. I'll do the other side next. You see the solder is not burning me. I'm perfectly fine. There's 2. And then finally for 3. Let's see if we can get this on there pretty good. Now the only issue with this one is it's arced upwards. So that can be a bit of a problem. Because the connector might not nicely form. Like we might have a hard time sliding the top on. But there we go. There's the 3. With this we're done, ideally. And let's pull this off. The connections will still be a little warm, so just be cautious about touching it. But here it is. And let me show you the top of this thing. So that's what the connections look like. And they're all solid. Like if I jiggle them, they should not come loose very easily. You don't want to be too hard with this, but if you barely tap it and it comes off. But these seem like they're on there all right. Now this piece right here might be a bit of a pain point because it's above this connector. I probably could have done that a little bit better, but let's see if we can slide it on anyways. So for this, again, this trigger here is going to block us if we try putting it on because this piece has to line up with that trigger. If the trigger is down like this, it won't work. So I'm going to put it on upside down, line that up, and then it can help to look inside a little bit. There you go. The black piece wasn't too much of a problem. There we go. It still worked just fine. Again, we need the strain relief, and this will just slide right on. And we'll just push this on, see if I can get away without aligning it. Now I'm probably going to have to look at where the divot is. It appears to be at the top right here. And then we'll slide this on. See how this is already on? If we had, soldered that on and forgot to slide this on, we would have to unsolder, desolder this, and then put this on and then do this whole thing again, which is just annoying. So let's see if I can't. There we go. Get that on a little bit further. So this is in a little bit more. And we screw that on. Again, our solder gun is off, so we turn that off. And we are done. We have the female part connected, the male. When I'm not explaining this, I go way, way, way faster and with nicer connectors. There's a few niceties that happen, but this is a tiny working XLR. We can connect it to something. In this case, we're going to connect it to a cable tester. I don't have one on me right now, but in the labs, you'll connect one to the cable tester, and the cable tester just sends a signal down each one, and it lights up an LED. So it'll send one down 1, it'll send one down 2, and it'll send one down 3. And when it does so, if the light doesn't match up across, that means you have wired this to either the wrong connection on this side. If no light lights up on one side, but it does on the other, then you've not actually connected these and there's a broken somewhere. Maybe something came off. But the most common error is things are either lighting up with the wrong combo, meaning you miswired it, or you have one light up and then more than one thing light up on the other side. And that means that you have a short and a piece of metal here is touching something that it shouldn't be touching, causing more lights to show up on the other side. So there's a whole load of issues that can happen. So we're going to check for that. But this is the process for making an XLR. It's nothing too crazy. This is a very, very short one. It's actually isn't half bad if you have a really short connection. You might end up making some of these on your own, but you might get some, some nicer wire for this. This is just whatever wire for the moment. The nicer wire has the benefit of being a lot more rugged. And when you move the wire and pull the side, it doesn't stress out the solder connections that you've made nearly as much. If you have any questions about this, hit me up in the lab. I suppose you could leave a comment below on this video, but the lab's really the better point. And also see how springy this is. If you had used the this thing, this little cable holder, to solder that, you may find that this doesn't work at all, or it's screwed up, and so you just avoid that problem. And I will see you in lab. Good luck making your cable.